Hey everyone, welcome and thank you for coming. I know you have a lot of other options. My name is Bandar Al-Turkmani. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm gay. I'm also an Arab. At JP Morgan, I'm a business development lead and strategy lead, part of the product organization that delivers experiences for our wealth management clients. And my other job is a surround sound lead for Sage, which is the reason why we're here today. I have this lovely panelists here. We're going to tell you more about JP Morgan Chase's journey to create a deeper, more immersive partnerships with strategic nonprofits. And I'm going to have them introduce themselves.
Hello, everyone. My name is Esther Alix. I use she, her pronouns. I am taking a nod to you. I am a Black Latina. I am the Senior Director of Development at Sage.
Great. And yeah, my name is Scott Malinowski. I work on a team at JP Morgan called pronouns he, him. I work on a team at JP Morgan called Tech for Social Good. I live in New York and based in Jersey City, and just really excited to be here today.
So I think Erin Uric just stole our audience, right? Because she's doing the NBC panel now. Not happy. But anyways, thank you so much for coming. My name's Thornell Hambro. I use he, him pronouns. I'm a gay male. Work at JP Morgan Chase, and I'm the global head of our community development pillar and our Office of LGBT Plus Affairs. My dream job, my boss is in the front row. And yeah, super happy to be here. No pressure.
Okay, so we're going to start this off by giving you a little bit more context so you learn about surround sound, what it is. So I'm going to begin with you, Thornell. Why don't you tell us about what surround sound is? Why did we create the program? And yeah. Absolutely.
So I expect you've all heard our JP Morgan Chase story about the Office of LGBT Plus Affairs, relatively new, but it's our full-time global dedicated team working on the LGBT plus agenda both in and outside the firm. So it's relatively new, right? It started officially in June last year. Prior to the office, what that meant was that all of our strategic nonprofit partners were managed by our Pride BRG. So to give you some context, my good colleague Herman, who was in the room, he helped me pull together a full list of all of our nonprofit partners globally. Every country where we've got an LGBT plus Pride BRG, those BRGs were linking and creating relationships in those countries. 200 LGBT plus nonprofit organizations globally that we were linked with in some form or another. Far too many. So our Office of LGBT plus Affairs came together and under Brad's good guidance to create some criteria and a really firm strategy around these nonprofit partnerships. So in doing so, in my role as the head of community development, it's really deciding who, when and where we should have strategic partnerships with globally. It doesn't mean we're going to get rid of all those 200 partnerships, not by any stretch, but what it means is we're going to go deeper with ones that we think we can offer a lot of value to, that maybe make sense to us from a location perspective and our employees, and that it aligns with our corporate responsibility and philanthropy objectives, and it's as simple as that. So as you can see on the screen, we've created some really robust tracking of these organizations. We categorize them down to multiple levels to really get a clear view of who we're supporting, what they do, what the themes are, what their specialties are, which locations, to see if we're over or under indexed against a particular nonprofit organization, type of organization. So just a couple of things here that I thought I'd call out before I move into some more details. The way we approach this is what's important to our company. So what are the key pillars for LGBT plus affairs? If you haven't heard already from Brad earlier in the week, community development, financial health and wealth, careers and skills, business growth and entrepreneurship. Those are our 4 key pillars. So when we think about our nonprofit partnerships, we hope that we can somehow fold them into the good work being done across those pillars. What's important to the community? So if you think about all these civil society organizations, these nonprofits out there, they all do incredible things, but does it make sense for our company to partner with them purely from a value add perspective? We are a bank, so we can certainly provide financial literacy opportunities, we can provide entrepreneurship, but then that's the whole point of surround sound, so we can go way beyond that. We can give them access to our consultants, our technologists, so you're going to hear from my friend Scott pretty soon. So, you know, what's important to the community, but more importantly, what can we deliver to them? Who in your company, or more importantly our company, when we came up with the strategy, is going to support this? Brad gets a reasonably healthy budget, but we need more money always, right? So then who else can support us? Is it the wider DEI organisation? Is it corporate responsibility? Or is it even the line of businesses that want to chip in and show their support for the community? And then I've talked about this, you know, where are these organisations strategically? Where does it make sense to partner with them? We, as a massive multinational organisation, we've got tech hubs in, I think it's 16 different locations. We've got corporate centres in many locations, Poland, some really, really challenging places. So do we partner with organisations there, or do we go more grassroots? That's the type of strategy we worked on.
So one of the things that I've learned through surround sound is the resources that we can actually leverage more beyond just financial resources. So can you tell us more about the philanthropic resources that we can leverage through the bank?
Absolutely, and that's really where the term surround sound comes from. So with surround sound, before the Office of LGBT Plus Affairs, we've got what we call our LGBT Plus Executive Forum. That's a group of over 400 executive director and managing directors globally who we leverage for a number of different, you know, initiatives and key objectives for our agenda. Back probably in about 2020, they started working with corporate responsibility to make a $5 million grant to 5 key strategic non-profit organisations here in the US. So this was before the Office of LGBT Plus Affairs. But during that discussion on, you know, let's make this $5 million commitment to these 5 organisations, Sage being one of the lucky 5, you know, it was, we can't just write a check. We need to get one of these EDs or MDs and assign them as the surround sound lead. And yeah, little hand gesture. So essentially what that means is that they've got their full-time jobs, so they're a volunteer, but they're gonna meet with this organisation on a regular basis and make sure that they're fully enveloped in all the philanthropic offerings that make sense for them and that we can offer. So on the screen here, this is a flavour, but employee volunteering, skills-based volunteerism. You're going to hear from Scott in a few minutes, but Tech for Social Good, getting our technologists to build solutions for the organisation. We have legal pro bono as an example, getting our legal department to provide legal services to the non-profit. And then a bunch of your standard employee volunteerism, so turning up and filling goodie bags, whatever needs to be done. I'm going to skip past Tech for Social Good because I don't want to steal your thunder. Board service and matching, right? So we put some of these EDs, MDs on boards. If they decide to contribute, we will match that. We do employee matching anyway. So a lot of executive support there. And then amplifying the community voice. So we'll sign on to statements that they might be trying to put out into the public. We will celebrate the good things they're doing, either through our own social channels or any way that we can, supporting their gala events, obviously. Whatever we can do to get out there, link arms with them and amplify their voice, that's what we will do. So this is kind of a high-level flavour, but we sort of get really creative as well, right? So globally, 64 office locations in different countries around the world. Huge organisation, many opportunities to lend our real estate. So if a non-profit organisation wants to hold an AGM or they want to bring in some sort of an event, we'll give them our office space to do that. So it's all of these in-kind opportunities that we look for besides just writing a check. Our surround sound goes beyond just financial support. Only just the other day, actually, and Brad, I don't even know if you knew this because we closed it out, I think yesterday, because JP Chase has our brand on a number of amazing event spaces around the world. Think about the Chase Center in San Francisco, Madison Square Garden. We actually gave tickets to some Madison Square Garden events to one of our non-profits so they could sell or auction off at their gala. So really cool stuff. It's about getting creative and going outside of just writing a check.
Yeah. For sure. So Esther, my next question is for you. JP Morgan Chase and Sage has had a relationship for quite some time now. But I think it's fair to say that the relationship has evolved to a partnership and the focus became better with surround sound. So want to hear from you, from your perspective, what has Sage gotten out of it and what does it mean to you, that partnership?
Sure. Just for a little background, so SAGE is the largest and oldest organization that works on behalf and advocates for LGBTQ elders. We love our surround sound relationship, especially working with you, Bandar.
Same.
We have taken advantage of all the ways in which surround sound has afforded SAGE, right? There is the ways in which we work with Force for Good, there is the Service Corps, there's also the volunteerism and board participation. So Force for Good, there's a program at SAGE called SAGE Care, and that is a credentialing program for all service providers who work with elders, especially with LGBTQ elders. So Force for Good has very generously helped us, well, during the pandemic, I should say, the platform that the credentialing program was hosted on was overwhelmed. And the Force for Good team came and helped us research, find a new platform to use it, and within 6 months, we were back being able to host thousands and thousands of folks wanting to take the credentialing program, which was amazing because all of that is very affirmative to our LGBTQ elders. The other way in which they helped, the Force for Good team helped, was our I forget what it's actually called, but it helps us. It's because SAGE is doing work advocating for LGBTQ elders in the US, we also get a lot of inquiries internationally. And one of the ways in which the Force for Good team helped us is creating a platform, helping us build a platform, essentially an online platform, in which elders, LGBTQ folks all over the world can access information, share resources. How do they deal with one thing and the other? So this is an incredible thing that they have done for us. You know, the other ways in which we partnered together is through our volunteer work, right? We get JP Morgan Chase volunteers. They do meal service. They come in and just help elders, like with plants. We'll have a Earth Day. They'll help plant. They'll help paint. Essentially what they do is be in community with elders. If you can imagine, many of our elders don't get to socialize, don't get to be in community with each other than in the SAGE spaces. And to have other folks come in and want to talk to them and hear about what's going on in their lives is very meaningful, both for the staff who participate, but also for the volunteers, and most especially for the elders who are there. So that's one of the ways in which we appreciate the surround sound. And then the final way is, you know, through board participation, we've had 2 Chase executives be part of the SAGE board. So all of those ways are the ways in which the surround sound team has really helped elevate SAGE.
Thank you. And I'm just going to add in here, the benefit, just for me working with, with Sage closely, I get so much joy and happiness out of it. And I also, I love working with your team. I love Brendan and Lynn and everyone else. And I view myself as, kind of this Robin Hood in JP Morgan. Although in this scenario, actually JP Morgan is telling me here's all the power, here's all the money, here's the ways or resources. Channel it in a way that makes sense for you to help your community. And in this in this instance, that's something that I kind of makes me more motivated even to work at JP Morgan and be happy there, as cliche as that sounds.
Just to add, we also think of you as part of our team. You work for
Same.
SAGE.
Yeah. I think I work at SAGE, but in JP Morgan.
I think it's fine, so she lives on there, right?
Okay, so shifting focus, we've heard from Sage. Scott, really excited to have you here. Why don't you tell us about the Force for Good program and Tech for Social Good? I didn't know it existed until Surround Sound, honestly, so please tell us more.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, no, we're a really cool team, and like I mentioned before, we're called Tech for Social Good. A lot of people don't realize it. So JP Morgan has like 250,000 employees all over the world. 50,000 work in technology. So we have people, all types of technical backgrounds and skills. We have software engineers, we have product folks, we have user experience people, we have a huge cybersecurity organization as well. And a lot of them are really passionate about, donating their time and, using their skills to give back to the communities that they live and work in. So we have a number of programs under the Tech for Social Good umbrella. We run hackathons where people stay up all night building really cool apps for nonprofits. We have youth programs. We go to schools and teach kids about cybersecurity. We have events where high school kids come in and build mock-ups of apps that align to the UN Global Goals. And then one of our largest programs is called Force for Good. So Force for Good is kind of a long-term volunteer program. Employees, we put them on teams of 5 to 10 people, and it's like a 10% time program. So they spend about 4 hours of their work week working on a team for about 8 months, building out a technology solution for a nonprofit. So, it's been really great, and we've been very fortunate to get to work with Sage on the 2 projects you mentioned. And, the first one, as you were mentioning, was a learning management system, and we put a team on it, and they did a lot of research on, there's a bunch of learning management systems out there in the marketplace. They did a bunch of research looking at the options, the trade-offs, the features, the long-term cost, and really helped Sage arrive at a decision. So that project wrapped up in the spring. Happy to hear just how successful it's been. And our second project is in progress right now. We're excited to deliver in a couple months. So allowing those international partners to upload resources, log into a portal, collaborate. We're really excited, and it's been great.
And how has that benefited the employees that were kind of seconded to work on these projects?
So our employees are just so excited to give back, to get to spend part of their work week doing that. I also think it's a great learning opportunity for our employees. We have, I think, almost 2,000 employees participate in Force for Good alone every year. We do 160 projects all around the world. We operate out of every tech hub that JP Morgan has. I think we have about 16 tech hubs around the world. It's just a great learning opportunity, getting really to ingrain themselves in our nonprofits and their processes, and talking to them and thinking about how to solve problems, understanding their technical challenges. I think it builds a lot of empathy in our workforce too, that you can only get from that sort of experiential opportunity. Couple other kind of quick examples. We've worked with so many organizations over the years. Couple I just want to call out. So ORAM, really fantastic organization, focuses on refugee or LGBTQ plus refugees and asylum seekers. They came to us, I think it was a couple years ago, for help with a new website. We built them a new site, and we were able to launch it with them, just making it easier for their constituents, for people who want to support their mission, for potential donors to engage with them and get the information that they need. Another really cool project that's going on right now is with Outright International. Outright does advocacy work for the LGBTQ plus community all over the world. And one of the things that's just super important to them is the safety and security of their employees, of their constituents, of everyone they work with and their data. And one of the benefits that we have as a global financial services company is that we have partnerships with a lot of other organizations where we're very familiar with the international cybersecurity threat landscape. And we love, having opportunities to share that kind of threat intelligence with organizations like Outright to help them think through, how they can best protect their constituents.
And if I can add to that, if you're familiar with some of these, right, Humsafar Trust, India, Impacto Digital, Argentina, just like us, the UK. So it's your global footprint that always blows my mind. And what's so fun is that we can speak to these organizations in these countries around the world, and we offer Force for Good as an opportunity, and they just can't believe that we've got that global reach, that ability to throw technologists and and help them out. So it's really transformative. Yeah.
And it's also very well structured. I was very impressed, like when I saw the work that your team has done on the analysis for the learning management system, and that also kind of like grew. It had an offshoot. There was another project that now we're looking at, and it's like everything was super organized. It was just like any other project that we would run that is actually funded by JP Morgan. And it's amazing, and the talent is great. Usually, actually, volunteers that raise their hands to be part of these things are your A type of talent. So
yeah, you have folks who are just so passionate, and then just have really impressive technical skills.
Tried to hire some of them.
I think the Service Corps program is similar, right? Because Service Corps for us is a similar concept to Tech for Social Good, but essentially it's where we would have really qualified program managers, project managers, go out there to nonprofits and provide consultancy. If there's some sort of a major program or a problem they're trying to solve, our really qualified people will go to them and help them work through it, build out a project plan, and it's offered globally as well. So it's amazing. It makes me so proud. And,
Yeah.
I was going to add around the Service Corps, like one of the ways in which it impacted SAGE is that we were, during the pandemic, obviously there was no in-person programming, and we went, as many nonprofits did, pivoted to virtual. And so we were able to provide like virtual programming to a lot of our constituents, but what it allowed us to do is to reach even more constituents online, right? Folks in the rural areas that we can't reach, BIPOC, trans folks who don't feel comfortable traveling, right? Or couldn't travel at that time. Like that particular, like we're exploring now how to do virtual programming on a national scale because of that. So yeah, it's been super beneficial for us as well.
Cool. So we got the background on surround sound, and we've heard from Sage firsthand how they benefited from the program, and Scott here told us about the resources that we have in-house that we can extend out to nonprofits. Thornell, before we open it up to questions, what tips or advice you would give to our partners here to make the most out of their partnerships with nonprofits, with corporations, or vice versa?
Yeah, absolutely. And we part of today's session, we wanted to make sure there's plenty of time for questions, because I think many organisations out there, you do philanthropy, you've got partnerships, but maybe you're thinking how to elevate it. So let's leave plenty of time for questions. What I would say is, for us, surround sound is like a top tier of relationship. We have 3 tiers. It starts at the emerging levels. That would be where it's a much smaller organisation. They potentially don't have a huge amount of scope presently to take on some of these offerings. So they would be what we would consider to be emerging. We'd probably pay a relatively small contribution. They're on our radar. We want to do more with them. We support them at a local level. We would then have strategic, which is where we're contributing more resources to them. They probably are more national in scale, sometimes even regional. And we would consider them strategic. They wouldn't have an executive director or managing director person assigned to them, but they would definitely have somebody in our Pride, BRG, speaking with them regularly, connecting with them, etc. So that would be strategic level. And then, as I say, surround sound is that top level where it's all in, multi-year partnership, etc. So in terms of what I would suggest to you if you wanted to build something similar, really align your strategy to your corporate responsibility, create a really strong partnership with them, but make sure that your approach is really closely aligned to their strategy, because obviously if you need to go to them with a business case for further support, it makes clear sense that you would align to their own objectives and their own approach to their own giving. Geographic and thematic coverage, that's what I talked about at the start. So we're really intentional about that, because, if you think about, say, for example, a really huge major centre like New York City, I can't imagine how many LGBT plus CSOs, civil society organisations, are in New York City, but we as a major bank are approached by them almost every week looking for support. So you really then have to think realistically, are we too over-indexed in one particular location? So be very clear about where it makes sense for your business to have these relationships, where do you have a good employee base that can support the nonprofits, etc., etc. Understand your offering. So we've been through at a pretty high level some of the things JP Morgan Chase can offer these non-profit partnerships, but you need to really understand that very well. You need to be fluent in it so that when you speak to the non-profits, you're not offering something you can't deliver. But I would say then make very good partnerships with the owners of those programs, obviously. Understand the parameters of those programs as well, because sometimes, you know, the organisation might be looking for more than you could potentially deliver. Track and report. That's been super important for us because, again, it comes down to being able to see where your overall map of partnerships are and where you may need to make adjustments. But we, believe it or not, before the Office of LGBT Plus Affairs, when it was the Pride BRG, which, as you all know with your own BRGs, is volunteers, they were out there striking up these relationships, but not really tracking. No strategy behind it as such. So we were really surprised when we reached out to Pride globally, asked them to send us the names of these organisations, got 200 in return. So really do track and report, because I think even in some of your organisations you might be surprised. If you're a global organisation or even national, the US, you might be surprised how many organisations are out there. Establish strategic partnerships, that goes without saying, right? So again, of that 200, we're still working on, I'm not going to say that we've got it nailed, we're still working on this final list of strategic and surround sound, but essentially we are building these strategic partnerships. We know who's in our crosshairs, who we feel that we should partner with more deeply, and just be clear about that. Be clear about who your company can help with, purely from a capacity perspective, but from a value add perspective. What does your company do? Who does it make sense for you to partner with? Finally, Bandar, relationship management, surround sound lead. You know, we've all got really, really passionate allies and LGBT plus employees out there. Pick the right ones with the right skill set to manage some of these relationships. And that's what I would say.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, thank you all. I think we can open it up to questions now. Jared.
Hello, my name is Kiara. My pronouns are she, her. I'm from Deloitte, and thank you so much for sharing the wonderful program that you guys have put together. The tips were very helpful for someone that tries to get involved in social impact at my own firm. I'm curious how you mentioned how surround sound sounded like a multi-year program, and I'm curious on how you maintain those relationships year over year and try to provide more benefits and more solutions to the organizational problems to the partner that you're working with.
Do you want to take that one as a surround
Yeah, sure. So I think the multi-year relationship, there's more to surround sound. There's also the multi-year commitment from JP Morgan Chase to Sage on building an intergenerational hub in the Cortona House in the Bronx. So as part of that, we're kind of tracking and also helping Sage accomplish some programs that help them establish that, that goal, which is to connect more and more elder LGBTQ plus community with the youth community. And so that's kind of like ongoing. There's always stuff going on. In terms of the other stuff that is not included as part of the grant, it really kind of like ebbs and flows. Like sometimes we actually have pretty busy quarters, and sometimes we don't. But we plan ahead, and we're always creative. And the Sage team is always coming up with ideas, and I always say yes. And that's how you keep it going.
And I would add to that as well that the expectation on Bandar is that he would meet with Sage on a monthly basis. So by having Bandar meet with Sage on a monthly basis, he's just fully enmeshed in everything they're doing. Whether that results in an immediate need is by the by. It's that close connection. And then from an Office of LGBT Plus Affairs perspective, we create a quarterly report for each of these organisations to really prove to well, Brad first and foremost, my boss, but to the DEI organisation, that we are delivering value to the organisation, and vice versa, that our employees are getting value from Sage, right? Like, this is a two-way relationship. We want our employees to do fun things, to get development, to grow, to volunteer. So we produce a quarterly report, monthly meetings, and then not just that, but if maybe I'll skip back. Is it going to allow me to do that? No, it's not. So anyway, at the very start, I was talking about our alignment to our own 4 key impact pillars, which is financial health and wealth, business growth and entrepreneurship, careers and skills, community development. So we're always looking out for opportunities for Sage and our other partners to link into those other 4 impact pillars. So there's my equivalent, the lead for each of those other 3, and we meet weekly, we're talking about what we can do with these nonprofits to make sure they're dipping into those other opportunities as well. So it's just a continual rinse and repeat of looking at opportunities and tapping Sage and the other organisations into them.
And it's another thing I want to add is that you can't lose steam. You always have to be creative and think of other ways. Like one thing Brendan and I have been talking about a lot is like, what can we do for the employee volunteer kind of aspect, or even like connecting the Sage patrons with employees. And I'm really focused on like having an event centered around trans, and I really want that to happen. So like sometimes you just kind of like have an idea and you really like, you know, focus on it, and sometimes it takes a couple of months. So that's how, you know, you kind of keep the program alive.
It's amazing. Thank you all. Brad Baumel, pronouns are he, him, and his, JP Morgan Chase. I think I would add to this a couple of things. One is, if you do develop a tiering strategy and you decide to make someone a surround sound partner, it is multi-year in its essence. Suggesting a leader from your organization for their board helps really align to their direction and their business and corporate strategy and organizational strategy. Putting a surround sound leader in place helps us stay intimately connected to their needs the board might not see themselves. And then truly, like, I think they said it on stage, Bandar works for them, kind of, but not, right? So it really has created this, and I spend a lot of time with each of the CEOs or EDs of each of these organizations to ensure we're maximizing the relationship to the greatest extent possible, because these organizations and their constituents need us, and we need them so much to carry out our mission.
We have a question in the back from the virtual audience.
Okay.
How do you get naysayers in the company to buy into this strategy?
Naysayers. Who would naysay this? Yeah. I mean, it's just...
There's none. We got rid of them.
Gosh, I wasn't expecting that question. Well, maybe I'll approach it like this. We really carefully parsed this concept by our corporate responsibility partners. We're really closely linked with them. We meet with them on a regular basis. So I'm going to answer it simply. No naysayers that I've come across. I'll let Brad take over in a second. Not that I'm aware of, but obviously with speaking with corporate responsibility, who are philanthropy at their core, their social impact at their core, they guided us, they maybe asked us to make some tweaks. We meet with them regularly. So we're constantly refining the process. And what you've seen today, this is new, right? So we've only built this within the last sort of maybe 8 months properly. So no naysayers, but certainly people within our company who have opinions, valuable opinions that we take on board. So we're open to making tweaks, and we do. So no naysayers. Within our Pride BRG, there are plenty of people who have opinions on who should be elevated from emerging to strategic to surround sound. Now that's difficult because that's on my shoulders to push back and explain why maybe at this particular moment an organisation may not be surround sound. But no naysayers. Well, would you agree, Brad?
Well, yeah, I mean, they shouldn't work for JP Morgan Chase if they're a naysayer. What I would add is, What I would add is the organization you keep speaking about, corporate responsibility, our foundation has been in existence for decades.
Right.
Our foundation gives, that's what they do. And they encourage every single employee at the firm to give in kind and financially as well. So it is part of our culture to give to organizations. We just took it to a different level, and we bring in the foundation with us.
Mm.
And I think we feel that at Sage. We feel well taken care of, right? Like we can come to you with ideas, you can come to us with ideas, and it feels like a really wonderful relationship to have together.
Question back here.
You can go ahead. Hi, Jared also from JP Morgan, he, him, and I am not a plant. Esther, safe space, real talk. What are some of the challenges of working with an organization of our size? You know, we bring so much process, so much red tape, bureaucracy. What are some of the tips you would offer to others who want to take this kind of support?
What I would say is work with Bandar. And it's a relationship, right? We listen, we hear what the red tape is not red tape, right? Because it's a mutually beneficial relationship. So it doesn't feel like a burden to us, and I don't imagine that it feels like a burden to Bandar and his team as well. So I don't have, like, that's real talk. Like, real talk, it's great, and it's been great, and we imagine that there will be more opportunities for us to work together, and whatever the things that we need to do to make that to move forward, we will do those things, as I'm sure that they will do those things as well. So.
And I can confirm that Jared's not a plant, but what I can say is he's actually a surround sound lead for the LGBT Centre in New York. So another one of our major grantees and surround sound partners. So, but not a plant, I promise.
I mean, from my perspective, I think, you know, like, not overthinking it. And yes, there is red tape, and we're a big organization. And I let things just solve themselves. Like, when we come up with an idea and we still don't know how we're going to implement it, what we're going to do with it, find the right team that is going to help me get it done, and they'll do the right thing. If there's something that we need to kind of raise or concern, like, we've had like very little issues, like, sometimes, and we just solve it. And it's you know, that's kind of like the operating model that we've been doing with Sage. And we kind of like keep you away from it. We don't tell you any. we don't really tell you anything about our red tape or bureaucracy, so you don't need to know it.
Awesome.
Hi there, my name is Chris, pronouns he, him. I'm coming from Nespresso. And my question is, how do you measure the success of the partnership? And are any key KPIs or metrics that you use to really assert its influence and value?
Sure. Yeah, so certainly in terms of when we made that $5 million commitment, those were very robust grant contracts and then objectives. So obviously Sage and the other organisations came to us with a pitch on how they would use those funds. It's multi-year, as we said. So each year there's a sort of end-of-year grant overview and a grant report, which is submitted to us. So there's KPIs within that I'll let you speak to. But it's as simple as that, really. We sort of track that multi-year grant and that partnership by what was contained within that grant contract. And before I hand over to Esther, maybe just jumping a little bit further down to organisations which haven't received such large sums, we would still have KPIs with them, right? So we would still make maybe less substantial grants, but we would make grants. We would have objectives with them. Again, we would meet with them regularly. We'd understand what they're trying to achieve, and we would track them to that. We do a lot of capacity building grants, which is really just providing funds so that the organisation can build capacity, get off the ground, to sort of instate some sort of a project. So in that sense, we wouldn't hold their feet to the fire in terms of expecting a real KPI measured outcome. But it depends on the level of the organisation, and the surround sound partners will always have KPIs.
I mean, for us, it's I mean, I think measuring like the work of the intergenerational program that we have at Crotona, those things, obviously we will meet those metrics and do what's required from the grant, but for us, an additional KPI, which isn't necessarily like something that we track like on paper, but we track with you, is that the ease of the relationship, right? That's important for us, that we have a good working relationship with you all. The ease in which your volunteers, the way we worked with all the particular groups, the ease of those relationships is also equally important to SAGE. How we manage those things, how the things, there is nothing that we've asked for that you haven't been able to provide. So I think that's an important KPI for us as well. And those things, although not measured in a particular, like we measure those things at SAGE. Those things are very important. And grant guidelines and grant KPIs, like those are all things that we are familiar with, and those are all the things that we will fulfill on our grants. Right? Yeah. I don't know if you want to add to that.
I mean, the grant KPIs are based around engagement. So, and you know, SAGE provides a quarterly report. They tell us about the opportunities and the events that they throw at the Cortona House. Just to give you some examples, you've had like ballroom, you know, you had voguing competitions there. You have partnerships with schools, and it's always fun to learn about them. We meet every quarter, and somehow, someday we'll have, you know, kind of like our meeting in person at the Cortona House to see that in person. In terms of like the extracurricular stuff that we've done, like obviously the success of Tech for Good or Force for Good, and the completion of the projects and making sure that SAGE is happy at the end of the day, that's kind of like our KPI. For employee volunteer events is making sure that employees are getting something out of these events and they're showing up. Doesn't really matter if it's like 2 employees or 5 or 10, I don't really care, as long as we're just creating the opportunity for them. Usually don't let that kind of like, you know, dim my excitement. So, yeah.
Quick comment over here. Hi, my name is Dennis Kanya with Ernst & Young. Pronouns are he, his, and him. I didn't have a question, but I did want to comment, address a comment about what you say to a naysayer. So the person who asked the question online. So if the individual is in a position of authority to make a decision maker, to the person who asked the question, my recommendation is memorize your company's mission statement, memorize your company's core values, and talk to that leader, the naysayer, in the language of your mission statement. Because I have found in my experience, if I can quote to my leadership or a client their mission statement and their core values and how what I'm proposing aligns to their mission statement, I win. Every single time, I win. Leaders cannot disagree with their mission statement. So if you have a naysayer in your organization, memorize the mission statement, memorize the core values, and you will win. Thank you.
Very good point. Thank you.
Am I on? Yes, I am. Hi, I'm Miriam. My pronouns are she, her, and I wanted to ask about, after you completed your inventory, for lack of a better word, of all of the global partners that had been sort of disparately managed, how did you go from your database to bucketing into, you talked about the sort of stops on the route of emerging, strategic, and surround sound. How did you manage that? And what did conversations look like with partners who maybe were receiving more attention but were deprioritized following the inventory?
Sure. Yeah, and I'll be very honest, it's still a work in progress. When you've got that many organizations spread across the world, it's a big job. Really the first thing we did was, speaking with our Pride BRG globally, find out what the proximity was with the organisation, because what we were finding is that in some instances it was simply a case of they'd brought in the organisation to speak on a panel, paid them a speaker's fee, and maybe they did that about once a year. So I wouldn't necessarily call that like a strong or a deep relationship, obviously. And then we had other BRGs and, gosh, Argentina, Brazil, Philippines, wherever, who were really deep with an organisation, not paying them a lot of money because BRGs can't do that. It's more of a volunteer-based led situation. But they were still deep with the organisation in terms of volunteerism, or somebody was on the board, an employee was on their board. So first of all, it was mapping that. It was understanding how deep are we today, what's our history, we mapped all of that history, still a work in progress. But then we went from, okay, is this an organisation in that location with scope for growth? Do they have ambitions to grow? If we were to do, say, for example, a Force for Good program, would they have the capacity to take that on? Because I believe that you only, one of your rules, I think, is that you have to have full-time employees at the organisation. It can't just be an organisation run by volunteers.
So yeah, so I mean, we work with organizations of all sizes. I mean, usually we want to have at least 1 or 2 full-time employees, but we've worked with organizations with just a couple folks getting their start, and we help them scale up and build capacity to organizations with, tens of thousands of people. We look at a lot of criteria, the impact that we can make, whether or not we feel that, what we can do from an impact perspective is achievable in the 8-month cycle, whether or not we have the skill set in order to do it. But we work with organizations of all types, and we definitely encourage any organization. Our next round of Force for Good, I know you have a slide up, launches January, February, depending on your region of next year. Applications are now open, and we encourage any organization who's interested to please apply.
So it was sort of, it's all these different sets of criteria that we are still working through. What could the organisation take on if we threw it at them? Does the local Pride BRG get value and see value? Do they obviously align with our impact pillars and our strategy? So a number of considerations, and what I've found has been the most valuable and we're still working through is that categorisation. So what would be an example? Because I know we had Steve in the audience, maybe ORAM, and I suggest you can speak to Steve because that is an amazing organisation. ORAM, an organisation that supports LGBT plus refugees around the world. So how would we categorise that? So we would sort of go human rights, we would so emergency need, we would say global, we'd put all these different tags and labels on it for us to then obviously create pivots and filters off the bat to just see exactly who we've got in our books, on our inventory. The question around going from emerging to strategic to surround sound, that's much more complex. So it really then all comes down to very deep strategy alignment, capacity, growth, what does it mean to that country or city, so on and so forth. So there's a lot to it actually.
Thank you. Okay. Hi. Oh, that's loud. Hi. My name is Sam, pronouns she, her. I'm from Cornerstone, which is an LMS company. We're kind of ramping up our strategic partnerships next year, but we also have a foundation, and I'm so sorry if you covered this earlier, I came in a little late, but could you tell us what the key difference is between what the JP Morgan Foundation does and what the Surround Sound program is, and also like how you kind of like pitched the idea considering JP Morgan was already putting funds towards nonprofits?
Sure. So our Office of LGBT Plus Affairs is what we call a Centre of Excellence within Diversity, Equity and Inclusion. So we are the Office of LGBT Plus Affairs. There's 6 others. That is advancing Black pathways for the Black community, advancing Hispanics and Latinos, advancing Asians, Pacific Islanders. We have Women on the Move. We have Military Veterans Affairs. Nate, nod, have I done them all? Thank you. Gosh, and how did I forget that? I've got a disability myself. Office of Disability Inclusion. So all of these are called Centres of Excellence within DEI that get their own budget. So to be very clear, I can, and obviously with Brad's help, we do make smaller grants, but we are not philanthropy and we are not making $1 million grants ourselves. We either get support from lines of business to find those funds, or we do go to the foundation/philanthropy. Key difference there is that philanthropy, the foundation have their own objectives, and you can read about that by going to our website, and they make much more substantial multi-year grants. We're talking high numbers. So that would be the key difference. We We're very community focused, obviously LGBT plus affairs. The other 6 centres of excellence focus on their communities. We're not grant making entities, but we do make small grants. Do you want to add anything, Brad? No? Good.
And I mean, it's also important to say that we're connected. We're like, I mean, we still connect with the foundation. We keep them up to date on, you know, certain things.
Yes,
So it's
yeah.
not like 2 different silos.
I meet with them monthly to sort of touch base on what we're doing. They did help us with the grant in Ohio, Florida, and Texas, literally just 2 weeks ago. So it's a very close partnership, but it's a distinct handoff between if it's an actual substantial grant, then it will go through all of their very intense due diligence. They will pay the money out. If it's something a little bit more operational, it will come from us.
Hey, Justin, he, him. After an organization is kind of brought in as a partner, things like that, and you want to trust the team lead, and I know there's a lot of different organizations, a lot of different companies, but what is more of the accountability time frame? Like, I've heard monthly, I've heard quarterly, like, let's say Sage, just because you're on there. Perfect example, you know, how often do we revisit this relationship, not you, because you're on their board? So I would hope you would have a bias and you work for them at this point. But a second set of eyes to ensure that the organization or the nonprofit shares the same visions, or they haven't pivoted in the last couple of years with, you know, the world that we're living in. It's constantly changing. How often would you kind of recommend to everybody that we have like a second set of eyes, or a, you know, you mentioned corporate responsibility. How often do they check in to make sure that that partnership is still in line with both of our values? And then if not, how would you kind of address that, or how would you work with the organization to kind of help guide back into the guidelines? Because we don't want it to be, you know, the JP Morgan guidelines or the vision. How can we help them? So again, 2 questions: how often, and then how would we kind of guide them if we feel that that partnership's kind of steering a different direction? Thank you.
So, I mean, simply put, because it's such a deep relationship, any divergence from what we discussed at the outset of the partnership as being the objectives, that's not necessarily a red flag to us, right? Because we're so deep with the organisation, it's a real partnership that, you know, certainly there would be good reasons for the divergence. You made a really good point around the current climate we will find ourselves living in, where we need to be nimble and we need to be able to accept change and help the organisation work through the change. Sometimes that divergence might make perfect sense and we'll be fully on board. So I would say that I am aware of instances where things have slightly diverged, but it's just not an issue. If it was an issue, then we would meet with them as we do, walk through it, talk through it. If we felt we needed to bring corporate responsibility in with their much deeper expertise, then we would do that. But this truly is a partnership. It's a month. You would meet monthly, I'm sure, or more.
More often sometimes.
More often.
Officially, it's quarterly, but we meet, like, we talk all the time. I think, you know, yes, you know, we're in this, like, we're in love, but I think you know, there's other folks that, you know, kind of dot our I's and cross our T's. We have board members that sit on Sage. That's not me. I don't sit on the board for Sage. You know, and also Brad and Thornell are kind of, you know, I'm accountable to them. And, you know, I think in that instance, I haven't really experienced it, but I think we would talk about it, just like any other partnership. We would just discuss it and then take, you know, things from there.
Thornell, this is Jared again. I was just going to add to answer the question, because my friend Chris Barbarisi from the center is here. Another surround sound partnership where, you know, we did have to adjust the KPIs. You know, we hit COVID. The goals that we had set were no longer made sense because there wasn't so much in-person activity at the center anymore. So by staying connected like that, as Thornell said, you know, we were making sure that I wasn't just knocking on Chris's door saying, why haven't you hit the numbers that you agreed in 2019?
Mm-hmm. I think the thing I'd add to that is we're still evolving. Like I spoke about yesterday, 18 months. We've been doing this for 18 months. So one of the things we're looking at, as you saw on one of the earlier screens, is all the criteria that Thornell and his team built out to assess which of the partners we should be focused on and we should be migrating to the different evolved maturities. I do think at some point we need to put an attestation process into place that happens annually, biannually, that we go back and look at, does this organization still meet all those same criteria? Has the world evolved, not necessarily the organization, has the world evolved to such a point where it's just not the same as it was once? And should we be thinking about other partners to move from strategic to surround sound or from emerging into strategic? So I think some level of periodic attestation is going to be important, but we're still so new in all this.
My name's Taylor Swenson, pronouns she, her. So I'm really amazed by all the cool things you all have been able to do through this process and through this initiative. And I know that there's probably no end of people with their hands out wanting money. And among those, there's a fair number that do want to actually do good work and perform to the KPIs they've agreed to and work within the system. And I know that also people can pitch that in a way that it plays well to the boardroom, but maybe doesn't affect the community in the way that it would like to be affected. I've seen, at least in some places where I've lived, we have LGBT centers, things like that, nonprofits where they say one thing, but the community that interacts with them says, yeah, they don't care about us. They just care about the next check in the mail, right? So how do you deal with community feedback by way of a way to make sure that it is having the impact that's desired and not just what's being pitched smoothly in board meetings?
That's a great question. So a couple of things. Even though I've mentioned we have this inventory of 200 organisations, varying stages and levels of partnership and history, we wouldn't bring any organisation to what we would call a strategic level or a surround sound level without having probably a good couple of years of decent, frequent and enduring history with them. So we would never go in with a large grant just off the bat. We would probably not bring them straight onto one of our major programs straight off the bat. We would start with our local Pride PRG, getting to know them, see what they're about, do some volunteerism, bring them into the office to speak, just some very small foundational, relationship starting activities to sound them out. Then what I would also say is that we definitely rely on our local Pride BRG to be that sort of local sounding board on what's happening in their local community. We definitely have had feedback from employees in some cities with that they're not doing anything for trans youth, but they very prominently put that on their website. And me sitting in London, that's where I'm based, I just wouldn't have that local knowledge. So we work with all of these global BRG partners, amazing groups like Tech for Social Good, Force for Good, to give us feedback, to give us their thoughts on some of these organisations, to build that history slowly before we dive in deep and sign them up to anything major.
We have maybe one more.
One more question,
One
maybe?
more question.
No.
All right, great.
So yeah, please do visit our Office of LGBT Plus Affairs. There's the QR code. You'll see some more information on the partnerships we have, some more information across those other 3 pillars that I mentioned. And if you are a civil society organisation in the room and you would like to put more work on Scott's plate, then scan the QR code and sign up. And that's globally too, right? Not just the US. If you've got branches of a civil society organisation, really anywhere in the world, just check it out and we'll see if we can help.
Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.